While it is true that many dogs have a hard time adjusting to any shelter due to dire circumstances, this one dog's case was an exception. They called him the saddest dog in Detroit. Not because the shelter's living conditions were substandard or anything. It's just that this poor doggo had a heartbreaking story to share. They called him Rio, an aged golden retriever whose owner had recently passed through. Since dogs are categorized as man's best friend and given that they can grow attached to their masters, Rio's case was a little different. The fact that this dog was over 10 years old, he had an inseparable bond with his previous owner. Naturally, when the dog's owner passed away, the poor animal was emotionally devastated. Things were taking a toll on the dog's physical and mental well-being to the point that even the shelter owners felt a huge wave of depression hitting them every time they laid their eyes on Rio. What Rio was going through was not normal behavior. Yes, a lot of dogs go through rapid changes and they demonstrate unstable behavior, but Rio was clearly taking it all to the next level. Rio arrived at the Detroit Municipal Shelter not too long ago. At first, he refused to eat or drink anything. The shelter owners thought that the dog's refusal to cooperate was a natural reaction to his new surroundings. However, day by day, Rio would continue to neglect his surroundings. There came a time when Rio refused to maintain slightest eye contact with any human or other dogs for that matter. In fact, there were several occasions when shelter keepers found this poor golden retriever awake during wee hours of the day and night. It was clear that the dog had gone through a recent traumatic experience. Eventually, one thing led to another and Detroit Municipal Shelter owners found out that Rio had recently lost his owner. The dog just wasn't ready to accept the reality and move on to a new life with some other owner. During his worst days, Rio would stand in one corner with his head bumped up against the wall. Something had to be done immediately. Employees at Detroit Animal Care and Control decided to help Rio. They would spend extra hours with Rio in an effort to lift his mood. During their work hours, the employees spent most of their time into looking for a potential dog owner. The problem was that Rio wasn't ready to accept anyone until this man came along. Christina Millman, executive director of Detroit Animal Care and Control, said, "We take on tougher medical and mental cases in an effort to help those animals that are going through kennel neurosis." Christina Millman further said, "A lot of people don't realize that dogs, alongside many other animals, can be awfully sensitive to their surroundings. Especially when it comes to dogs, they are aware of everything that's going on around them, and they react accordingly to it. Good things make dogs happy, while sad or upsetting stuff can be seen in the form of most unapologetic animal behavior. Dogs are basically descendants of wild wolves and other predators. Over several decades, their shape and form evolved into cuteness, which helped them to stay with their human companions. Dogs associate human beings with a safe refuge where they have someone to take care of them. In this context, dogs, as a domesticated species, know that the person's life is important because he takes care of the animal in return. Naturally, the same dog would be disturbed if something were to happen to his owner. Some call it survival instinct, while others think that it's the animal's way of showing affection. On the contrary, several studies revealed that what Rio, the saddest golden retriever in Detroit, is experiencing is the most extreme form of love. He adored his previous owner, and now he's grieving the loss of that person. One of the caretakers at Detroit Animal Care and Control said, "Rio was not being reactive to anybody. He would face a corner as if being punished and wouldn't even respond to his name." It was only then that the Detroit Animal Care and Control Center's very own employee, Ryan Callahan, decided to give the dog a new foster home. Both Ryan and his wife knew what they were up against because Rio was an older dog. Young dogs are easy to take care of, but older dogs have the tenacity to demonstrate rigidness. Ryan Callahan said that it was the right dog and the right time to take action. "He needed us, as we were able to provide all the attention and undivided care to Rio. Other new owners may not be even aware of what Rio was going through." To get started, Ryan and his wife made a special room for Rio. They started with redecorating a few things and noticing how Rio would react. As a result, Rio, the saddest golden retriever, began to react by slowly easing up a little. There came a day when Rio would go to Ryan and even sit in his lap if he called his name. It was then that Rio also began to look Ryan in the eyes as a way of showing recognition towards the new owner. Ryan thought that since Rio was now on the road to recovery, it would be okay to send him back to the Detroit Animal Care and Control Center. However, his wife intervened and decided they should keep the dog. If Rio realized that he was betrayed again, perhaps he'd never be able to recover again. Such dogs sometimes expire pretty soon if they are abandoned twice or something bad is to happen. Ryan's theory towards Rio's recovery is that the poor animal just wanted someone who dote extra care. At this point, Ryan's best hope is to not leave the dog or give him up to another adoption center. Meanwhile, the director of the Detroit Animal Care Shelter hopes that Rio finds semblance and happiness at his new place. We have helped the dog through thick and thin after he suffered a tremendous loss. We will continue to do so if any situation calls for it later, said Christina Millman.
This story was really incredible, but you will like the next one more.
Heartbroken dog goes to the shelter and instantly knows he's being surrendered. One of the worst things that can happen to a dog is losing its family. Every year, thousands of dogs are abandoned by their owners and find themselves sad and confused in a kennel, wondering what they ever did to deserve such cruelty. For one volunteer, one of the surrenders she witnessed moved her to tears, and this story is sure to melt your heart too. It's not the situation that's unique, unfortunately, but it's the dog's reaction and the owner's response that will disturb you. By the end, you'll have to choose whose side you're on. California native Nancy Klein had always loved animals, so volunteering at the Modesto Stanislaus Animal Service Agency was a no-brainer. It was there that she met a sweet dog named Moses, whose story is most likely going to break your heart. Poor Moses hadn't had much luck in his short 4 years of life. A pit bull with a sweet demeanor, he was already being surrendered by his second family. And while pit bulls are known to have aggressive tendencies, in this instance that wasn't the case. He was kind and lovable, seemingly picture perfect. Everyone in the shelter asked the same question. Why was such a perfect dog being given up for adoption? It didn't take long until everyone was gasping. Unfortunately, pit bulls are one of the more common breeds that find themselves in shelters. Due to the breed's reputation, they have a harder time being adopted and are usually one of the top breeds to be euthanized. For pit bulls, surrender at a shelter is usually a death sentence. Klein couldn't believe that anyone would want to give up Moses. She detailed his surrender on a Facebook post. As she was leaving the shelter, a dog was being surrendered, and while it was a sad moment, it was the dog's reaction to being left that touched her heart. According to Klein, sweet Moses held on to his owner. She revealed it was like the dog knew he was being left. Tears in her eyes, Klein approached the owners to understand why he was being surrendered. As Klein walked towards the family, she was bursting at the seams with anxiety. It's a tough question for anyone to ask, and she didn't want to offend the family, but she had to know why they were giving the pup up. Nerves weren't the only emotion running through her body, however. Klein knew that if the family gave her an insensitive answer, that she would have to hold her tongue. She was tired of seeing so many pit bulls being given up on, and she wanted to make sure there was nothing that could be done to prevent this horrible circumstance. So she took a deep breath and asked them why. Their answer, surprisingly simple. As she asked the family why they were giving the sweet boy up, she couldn't help but feel the seriousness of the situation. She realized the family didn't want to give up their pup, but they were faced with a situation no pet owner should have to go through. Instead of feeling angry with the family at their decision, she felt terrible that they were in such a tough situation. The truth is, they didn't have much of a choice, or so they felt. It was revealed that the family had adopted Moses a year earlier, but due to relocating, they wouldn't be able to take him. The sad fact was, their new home would not allow dogs, and although Moses was a sweet and docile boy, they felt he deserved better. Although they didn't want to give him up, many people thought they could have done more to better the situation, especially after witnessing his next reaction. As time went on, Moses became more agitated and upset. Klein snapped a photograph of the poor dog up on his hind legs, clinging to his owner. It was obvious the dog did not want to be left at the shelter and knew he was moments away from being an orphan. In a desperate attempt to gain sympathy from his owners, Moses starts to beg for affection. Unfortunately, the owners remained stoic, not returning the affection. Scared and confused, Moses began to seek out comfort from other people at the shelter. Klein was absolutely heartbroken by the poor dog's desire to feel some love in such a stressful time. Klein shared her thoughts on the heartbreaking experience with the media. "He's one of the sweetest dogs I've ever met," Klein revealed. The poor dog took to Klein and crawled up in her lap. Moved to tears, Klein could tell he wanted her to take him with her. According to her account, Moses wanted to meet everyone at the shelter that day, especially a little boy and his mom he seemed to instantly connect with. Klein revealed it was hard for her to not adopted Moses right there on the spot. However, she knew, with how sweet he was, that his adoption chances would be pretty good. Klein quickly uploaded the video of his surrender to social media to hopefully share his story and increase his adoption chances. Of course, many people had opinions on the condition of his surrender, and many were vocal. You're probably safe to assume that most of the responses were negative. Animal lovers united in their disgust that the family would move to a home where animals wouldn't be allowed. And despite the owners being responsible and bringing the dog to a shelter, many felt they should be reprimanded for their actions. The aggressive comments continued. One person commented that people who surrender pets due to a new living situation should be banned from adopting a new pet in the future. According to the social media user, you can always find a home that allows animals. However, this was just a tame post. Some people had even stronger words for the owners, and they weren't afraid to tell them. You'll have to decide for yourself whose side you're on. Humans that discard their animals as if they are trash are horrible, one user wrote. They don't deserve the kindness of an animal. Despite the strong negative reactions, some people believe that without knowing the family's full circumstances, you can't judge them. Despite the reasoning, the most important thing now was finding Moses a new home. The search had begun. Regardless of the difference of opinions, everyone did agree that they wanted Moses to get his happy ending. Surrender was definitely a better option than a family getting abusive with a dog they no longer wanted. Not to mention, Moses was so lovable, many people jumped at the chance to adopt him. Thankfully, it didn't take long for Moses to find a new family. Klein posted the happy news on Facebook, where she revealed that Moses now had 2 children to play with, endless love and toys. His new family was adamant it would be his forever home. While some may look at Moses' reaction to being surrendered as unique, the truth is that dogs have the ability to express a full range of emotions. They know when something is wrong and can express fear, sadness, and most of all, love for their human owners. It's even more heart-wrenching to know that Moses had a clear idea of what was going on the entire time, feeling unwanted and unloved. Dr. Stanley Coren has researched the psychological development of dogs for some time and believes that animals have the emotional capacity of a 2-year-old human child. This means their emotional development stops before they can feel and understand guilt, contempt, shame, or pride. Since dogs have the emotions of a toddler, it means they express love very strongly. They're big babies that just long for a loving home, and after careful consideration of their mental capacity, it's horrifying that anyone would give up their dog willingly. Dr. Coren explains it the best. The good news is that you can feel free to dress your dog in that silly costume for a party. He will not feel shame, regardless how ridiculous he looks, Coren told Psychology Today. But your dog can still feel love for you and contentment when you are around, and aren't these the emotions we truly value? Moral of the story, treat your animals like you would a 2-year-old child, with patience, respect, kindness, and love.